Hello and welcome to It's About Your Future. I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. This program is the first in a series of conversations that we are having with members of the government to get answers to questions that you, the members of the public, continue to ask and things you're raising. So, this particular episode is featuring two men who hold very significant and important portfolios within the government of the Bahamas, and we are talking about governing in a crisis. My first guest is the Deputy Prime Minister, who also holds responsibility for public works, the Honourable Desmond Bannister.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
As well as the Minister responsible for health, the Honourable Renwood Wells. Sir, welcome as well.
Thank you, sir.
Gentlemen, it is no secret, and it's been said over and over, that the Bahamas has undergone the two greatest crises in the history of this country within 2 years. Hurricane Dorian being the first in 2019, and the second came upon us almost a year ago in 2020 that we are still grappling with. Both, in many ways, we are still grappling with. Certainly Dorian is going to be with us for a while. But each of you would have assumed ministerial portfolios, new ministerial portfolios, and significant ones within this last year, within the past few months. Deputy Prime Minister, I'm going to start with you. What was it like having to transition into that role in the middle of the greatest global pandemic and one of the greatest economic crisis we faced? What was it like having to take on that number two role?
Jerome, it's a wonderful honor to be able to serve the Bahamian people as I've been called upon to serve, to have the Prime Minister and to have the Cabinet have the confidence in me to give service. And particularly so when you look at my background. I come from a small community in Andros, no more than 300 people. I went to a small school with 20, 30 students at the most. So to be able to come from that environment and be able to serve my country in a top post in the government means that I can be an example for young people throughout this country. And it is a particular honor to serve. It is a special honor to be called on to serve in a time of crisis. And this is the greatest crisis that we have faced in our lifetimes. Dorian was the worst Atlantic hurricane ever recorded. The worst. After that hurricane, when I went into Abaco and I saw what had happened, I was literally in tears.
And then, sir, if I could,
Yes.
you've got less than a year later, we are now faced with COVID-19.
We're faced with COVID, and not only that, we are faced with an international recession where we cannot have visitors come into our country as we're accustomed. And so revenue is down. The Bahamian people have had to appreciate that for their own safety, for long periods of time, we've had to be locked down. So it has been a challenge, but leaders emerge out of challenges.
Minister Wells, you took on probably, I would say, in this instance, probably a more high-profile ministerial post than the Prime Minister in the middle, and I don't say that with any disrespect, but because of what we were facing and still are, the Minister of Health is the focal point. What was that like for you, particularly when people said, well, he's not a doctor. We should have a doctor in a time of crisis. What was that like for you, and how was that adjustment period been for you?
Well, Jerome, I would say I am happy and with the confidence reposed in me by the Prime Minister, and I am more than gracious to be able to serve the interests of the Bahamian people, to seek to move forward the whole sector of health. I'm also appreciative of the confidence, as the Deputy Prime Minister would have said, the confidence that was reposed in me by my other cabinet colleagues as well. Taking on the portfolio, the Prime Minister gave me very clear instructions as to what it was he wanted to see take place in regards to health. And I hit the ground running, seeking to ensure that the health of the Bahamian people, that the COVID pandemic that was beginning to increase with spiraling cases of COVID at the time, that the Ministry of Health engaged immediately in a way whereby we could seek to contain the virus, contain the community spread that we were experiencing, and to be able to bring some sense of normalcy back to the Bahamian community.
I've got to ask you, you said the Prime Minister gave you a specific set of instructions. What were those instructions?
The instructions were we needed serious infrastructural challenges met. There was some personnel challenges in regards to COVID. There were some supply challenges in regards to ensuring that we got the requisite PPEs, personal protective equipment, and there was also some challenges on the IT side with the existing systems inside the Ministry of Health. And so with the technical team of health, with my cabinet colleagues backing, we were able to address a number of those issues within the month of both July and August that gave us an opportunity while we were also instituting the emergency orders where the Prime Minister, as you would have known, put the country in a lockdown, Grand Bahama for about a month, which is 2 cycles of the virus, and then New Providence for a week, which was 1 cycle of the virus, that gave us an opportunity also to be able to address those issues, the personnel challenges, the policy challenges, and the procurement challenges. I look at it as when you're addressing a crisis, you need to be able to address those 3 Ps in order to be able to get the requisite results that you're seeking to
We
get.
certainly will use this opportunity to talk a little bit more about them. I do also want to advise the audience and you gentlemen that we have some questions that have come from the public via our virtual platform. We're going to get to the first one in just a moment. But Deputy Prime Minister, when a country is now in a lockdown state, people are not working, things aren't happening. How do you keep that country going from a public works perspective when, we can't go without certain essential services? And then there are things even on the government's drawing board that should be happening but cannot happen because people just cannot be together. We cannot assemble. How are you able, or were you able to keep those, and to what extent to keep those services and programs going?
We have been able to continue with the major projects throughout the country. And you will see in recent times, I've been in Andros, I've been in Long Island, we've been in Cat Island. Cat Island, for the first time, is getting water. Can you imagine that in all these years, people in Cat Island don't have water coming to their homes? We've been able to open a new road in Long Island, a new bridge in Andros, another bridge in Long Island. We're opening in Abaco now, the Doan Road in Elbow Key, which threatened to cut that whole key in half. So we have been able to engage infrastructural development throughout the country. And that has made a difference in the well-being and in the lives of Bahamians. At the same time, in New Providence, the government realized that it is critical for us to have stimulus initiatives. And so we were able to create drainage initiatives, which are small initiatives, don't cost a whole lot of money, but impact the lives of people, and also able to put money into the hands of small contractors. We were able to create park initiatives. One of the critical issues that the Minister of Health tells us in a COVID environment is that people ought to be able to go outside and exercise. And so throughout the communities now, we are developing parks where families can exercise in a healthy environment. Then I believe what is the most exciting project in the history of our country is the new glass window bridge. It is going to be a superhighway above the ocean that it will never be closed. It is going to be one of the wonders of the world. And as the Minister of Health has just reminded me, the current glass window bridge is considered the narrowest crossing in the world. And so this is going to be an exceptional project that involves engineering of a kind we've never seen in the Bahamas. It is going to be a very special project for the people of North Eleuthera, and it is going to attract tourists to that community as well as provide transportation. And the final project that I'll mention, among the many that we're doing that are exciting for me, is that when you see Ragged Island again, you're going to be amazed at what has happened there.
Transform.
With respect to the solar that is in place now, and the school that we are building there. And that school is halfway complete. It is going to be the most modern school that's ever been built in this country to date. It is going to be the school that we will use as a model for building other schools. Ragged Island will be, in the next 6 months, completely transformed from what you would have seen it as.
Will that include the government buildings that were damaged as well?
Well, when the school is completed, remember now, the school is also going to be a hurricane shelter. It is going to be a building that instead of withstanding 150 mile per hour winds, is going to be built to withstand 180 mile per hour winds. Once that is finished, and we can ensure that Ragged Island is safe if there are hurricanes, then the Minister of Health has already approved a design for his new clinic. We have approved a design for a new police station, and we're going to continue to build that community. We've been able to improve the roads. We've been able to create sidewalk initiatives.
I'm glad you brought that up because that was coming up.
Yes.
People seem very angry, particularly about the sidewalk. Why would you build a sidewalk in the middle of a pandemic? People need money. I need food. I'm without a job. And the government is spending millions on sidewalks.
Yes.
Understood.
And so when you have in the small contractors being able to get small contracts, a few $1,000s, they are able to ensure that money goes into their communities, the communities where they live. So when I go home, I can get the neighbor's son to come and cut my lawn, and he can get some money. I can get someone to come and paint my house. I can do the things that I would not normally be able to do. And that money spins throughout the community. And that's the whole idea.
That's ripple effect. Minister, I know you want to get into some responses, but I do want to give those on our virtual platform an opportunity to get in on the discussion. Our first virtual guest is Tina Foster, a registered nurse, and I'm going to take the liberty to say, Minister Wells, she probably has a question for you. Tina, are you there?
Hi, good day. How are you?
Great. Minister's here. I'm sure you have a question for the Minister of Health. I just took that liberty.
What is the action plan for the COVID-19 vaccines that are on their way as it pertains to alleviating the fear of Bahamians, being that Bahamians has already stereotyped the vaccine itself, and it's not even here yet?
Thank you so much for the question. The Ministry of Health's technical team, we're going to be engaging in a PR campaign to be able to explain the new technology that Pfizer has instituted with the mRNA technique in developing their vaccine. Both AstraZeneca and possibly Johnson & Johnson, that may be approved in about a week, used old vaccine technology that the Bahamian people are quite familiar with. That was used in vaccines such as the flu vaccine and mumps, rubella. And so the plan of the ministry is to, over the next week, we've been promised by the WHO that in a week or two, we will be getting about 100,000 doses of AstraZeneca coming into the country. We're going to store that at our national vaccine facility in country. We have one. And we are also preparing for the possible Pfizer vaccine, if we receive it as well. We're purchasing the ultra low temperature freezers at minus 70 degrees. The Cabinet of the Bahamas gave authorization to do such. And when the vaccine comes in country, we're going to be looking at vaccinating persons such as Tina, who's asked the question, our frontline healthcare workers, those persons who are over 60 years of age. And then we'll be looking to also vaccinate teachers and those who are going to be involved in the major part of our economic life and livelihood, which is the persons who are involved in the tourism industry. But also, Jerome, the vaccine is going to be available for every Bahamian who would like to take the vaccine.
Is it going to be free?
It's going to be absolutely free. The government of the Bahamas, the Cabinet of the Bahamas has taken two fundamental policy decisions. One, actually three. One, it's going to be free. Two, no one is going to be coerced or forced to take this vaccine. And three, the vaccine is not going to be given to anyone who's under the age of 18.
Okay, so a couple things here, and we're going to go take our first break in just a minute. But there is a growing concern amongst Bahamians, and I think she brought it up in her question, that they don't want to take it for whatever reason. I mean, there's an anti-vaccine sort of movement around the world, and there are all these stories about side effects and concerns. And I guess the second part of her question, if I can, was, dealing with the fear factor. People are afraid, and people are even saying, oh my gosh, this is unprecedented, the time that, this vaccine was developed, and there are all kinds of things going around. Will that campaign, or will your ministry be seeking to allay some of those fears and present to us some kind of evidence that says to us, you've done the requisite research, etc., this has been signed off on by independent folks. People just, I guess, want an assurance that it's safe. How do you allay those fears and tell us and make us understand or believe that this is safe?
Well, the clinical trials, all three of the now approved vaccines have gone through the three requisite clinical trials for the approval of vaccines. And the WHO has looked at the studies and has approved those. So the international community, the scientific community, the medical health community that deals with the approvals have done so. Secondly, I want the Bahamian people to know that the government of the Bahamas is not going to be bringing any vaccine into the country that has not been approved via these processes. So they can have a sense of security in that the only vaccines we are going to be deploying and offering to the Bahamian people are these approved vaccines.
Because, there was talk about vaccines coming from China and Brazil, and there was all these, are these the same AstraZeneca that the folks in the U.S. are getting?
It is. And, the beautiful thing, Jerome, about the vaccines that we're seeking to deploy is that the efficacy of these vaccines are above 70%. And the AstraZeneca vaccine that we're bringing in country is showing the potential of stopping spread as well, because there was the thinking that the vaccine, even though you take it, you might have still been contagious and infectious in spreading the virus.
So
AstraZeneca is showing just the opposite.
So explain those of us who didn't get past like BJC biology. What does efficacy? Explain the efficacy.
It means how effective the vaccine is in stopping you from getting COVID. So in the case of Pfizer, it is 95% will stop you from getting the infection of COVID-19. AstraZeneca is around 75%. And Moderna is around about 90%. Okay. Those are the approved vaccines that we have now. And I also wanted folks to understand and know too, Jerome, for those who may have a concern about taking a vaccine. Vaccines have now been deployed for well over 2 months globally, and millions of individuals, I think some 22 million in India has already received AstraZeneca, and India's local national vaccine called Covaxin. You would have had millions of persons in the United States vaccinated, both with Pfizer, Moderna, and AstraZeneca. You have millions in Europe being vaccinated. And it's interesting that the British, they are in a lockdown even while they're deploying their vaccine to their population. And so the Bahamian people can look, we can see those who are receiving the vaccine and see the results for those who've already received it to understand and know that it is safe.
We are receiving, I think it's 100,000, you said, in that first wave, that first group, somewhere around there. Is that
we
correct?
are receiving, we're supposed to get 100,000 doses of AstraZeneca. It is a 2-dose vaccine, so that's for about 50,000.
50,000. Okay, so, you're looking at population, there are 350,000 of us. When do we expect the rest to come? At what rate?
We are in discussions with the manufacturing companies that manufacture both Pfizer and Moderna. So the government of the Bahamas is having direct conversations with the manufacturers for the approved vaccine. We have also been offered vaccine by one of the largest country that produces vaccines for the globe, which is India. India has offered to grant us X amount of dosage of vaccine. But we are very much interested in the COVID shield that India produces, which is the AstraZeneca form of the vaccine. India has produced, as I said earlier, its own local vaccine called Covaxin. We're waiting for the WHO to approve Covaxin. If Covaxin is approved by the WHO, we would be looking at sourcing those as well from India.
Minister, we've got to take our first break in the program. Lots more to talk about. DPM, I haven't forgotten about you. I got lots more questions as well. Stay with us, though. We're going to be back with more right after this.
We have a prime minister who's a doctor, and his focus is on saving lives. When I heard about COVID, I was practicing medicine in Virginia, and I knew I had to come home. It's a lonely virus. It's hard on patients, and it's hard on families. Dr. Minnis cares. He's working with healthcare experts on protocols that are needed to keep everyone safe. He made sure we had the necessary equipment we needed to treat our patients. Dr. Minnis is working hard to bring us together and keep us safe.
Around the world, COVID has taken lives and hurt communities. Sadly, the Bahamas is not immune. As a doctor, saving lives was my priority. As Prime Minister, it's still the same. Analyzing data, working with experts, we've focused on saving lives. Now we're working to get our economy up and running in a safe and responsible way. Because together, we'll beat back the virus and get back to building a better future for everyone.
If you're just joining us, the program is It's About Your Future, and I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. This is the first in a series of discussions with members of the government, asking questions that you have been posing and getting the answers that you want. We're talking about governing in a crisis. My guests for this particular show, Deputy Prime Minister, the Honourable Desmond Bannister, and Minister of Health, the Honourable Renwood Wells. Gentlemen, our first segment really focused a lot on COVID-19. But this crisis that we speak of began for this government in 2019 with Hurricane Dorian. And our next virtual guest is a survivor of Hurricane Dorian from Abaco, Cassandra Lewis. She joins us on our virtual platform, and she has some questions for you. Cassandra?
Good evening. How are you?
Pretty good. The ministers are here waiting on your questions. Thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here. Abaco has been proven to have been affected by Hurricane Dorian far more greatly than anywhere else, and there's still much work to be done. Considering the global pandemic that we're now facing, what is our government doing to contribute to the still complete reconstruction over here in Abaco?
Thank you for your question.
Okay. Ms. Lewis, thank you for your question. I can't imagine what you and your family must have gone through during Dorian. I saw what happened afterwards, and as I indicated earlier, it moved me to tears. But notwithstanding that, immediately after the hurricane, this government sprung into action. We helicoptered down there. We surveyed the Great Abaco, Little Abaco, and all of the keys. And then we started immediately to provide relief to Abaconians. And you may recall that we were bringing in relief items from the very outset, by helicopter, by any means possible. Our partners from abroad were able to bring in relief assistance immediately. We sought to seek to transport persons out of Abaco who were there at the time and who wanted to leave. And once there was some stability, and I can't say there's never 100% stability, but once there was some stability, we began to look at how we could improve infrastructure for persons who were in Abaco, because they had to live in those circumstances. We started with communication, and once we established some communication, then we started to look at the issues of power, the generation of power, the replacement of power, and Abaco is a very long island. So that was quite an interesting challenge. We brought in generation at different places in the island, and we were able to assist by providing generation in some of the keys so that there could be small generators operating because all of the lines were down. And then we had to consider how are we going to create permanent assistance and permanent infrastructure for Abaconians. And as a result of that, every single government agency was involved in ensuring that we would do something in Abaco that made a difference in the lives of Abaconians. You would have seen that every government minister visited Abaco. Each of us had to be there to see for ourselves what was needed to be done. Every one of us. From a perspective of my ministry, we had to ensure that we had the technical experts there who could advise us on the steps we had to take in the short term so that we could create a result that we wanted to start looking at long-term fixes.
Minister, thank you very much. The last question, Minister, I wanted to go back. It occurred to me, we didn't talk about the variant and our preparation. Should we have a situation where this new strain of COVID now reappears, or appears, pardon me?
Well, Jerome, what we have done to be able to first know whether or not we are experiencing any sort of new variant in the Bahamas is we have sent off samples to the lab in Rio de Janeiro that does the sequencing, as well as the CDC. And we've also sent 10 samples off to the Caribbean Research Institute down in Trinidad. The reality is we also have in place the requisite therapeutics, as I would have said before, that has shown the dexamethasone, the remdesivirs, they've shown efficacy with the virus. And the good thing, too, for the Bahamian people to know and understand is that the vaccines, such as AstraZeneca and others, have also shown that they are effective against the variants that have appeared, both the UK variant and the South African variant. And we're hoping that those studies that says that the vaccine has been effective holds.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for appearing in our program. This, of course, is the first in a series of sit-downs where we're talking to government officials. Some of your colleagues are going to be joining me in these very same seats going forward to answer those questions. So thank you for taking the opportunity to provide some answers. I know that the Bahamian public always has lots of questions, and so we're taking these opportunities to try and get some answers to those questions. Again, thank you very much, and best of luck to you.
Thank you for having us here.
That's
you so
going to
much,
do it for this episode. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.